Hey everyone, welcome to the first episode of Ty Talk's newest show, Double Pivot. I'm Andrew, that's Timmy, and we're your holding midfielders for this new show. If you don't know us, we're just two guys from Section 205 who pretend to know ball. But for you actual ball knowers out there, you can tell us which of us is the deep line playmaker and which of us is the destroyer. Before we get started, if you're watching us on YouTube, then please take a second to subscribe to our channel, hit that thumbs up button. It really helps Ty Talk get to more people. You can also find us on the main Ty Talk feed of your favorite podcast applications like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you're listening there, leave us a 5-star rating and a short review. With that out of the way, let's cozy up, grab your espresso, and let's get started. As I mentioned, I'm here today with my co-host, Timmy. He'll be breaking down the format for tonight's show. How are you, Timmy?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well, Andrew. I'm excited to be here on night 4 of our attempts to record the inaugural episode of Double Pivot. So for the listeners and watchers, you can think of Double Pivot as a Rhode Island FC variety show. So we plan to release these maybe every 6 weeks or so, give or take a couple of weeks. And each episode will consist of 2 or 3 segments that can touch on any variety of different topics. It could be, tactical deep dives, looking at things like set pieces, formations, individual player performances, and then focused on the roster, different ideas like that with things in and around the team. And then we also want to focus on some segments on match day experience, maybe things like the food in the stadium, some fun stuff like that, and other pieces around the fan culture. So really any variety of things could make up one episode of Double Pivot. With that said, Andrew, could you set the stage for where in the USL Championship season we are today?
Yeah, definitely. So we are a couple days past the second Pittsburgh game. So we're recording in early June. We are in between that Jägermeister Cup game against Pittsburgh and the upcoming game against Miami for the league at home. So roughly a third of the way through the season. So 10 games into the league year and then 2 out of 4 in the group stage of the Jaeger.
Yeah, exactly. So with this episode being recorded at the 1/3 mark of the USL Championship season, 10 games out of 30 played, we thought that for the 3 segments today, we would just kind of focus on the roster and how it's performed so far this year. So we have 3 segments that we want to get through today. We have Glaze or Haze, where Andrew and I are both going to give kind of our vote on if a player's performed over or underperformed our expectations for the season so far. We're going to do tier talk, which is kind of your traditional tier list format that you might have seen on YouTube previously, you might be familiar with. And then we're going to do a few rounds of start, sit, sell with a few different groupings of players that we came up with. So with all of that out of the way, I think we can move into our first segment, which is going to be called, like I said, Glaze or Haze. So to break this down a little further, what this means and what we're going to be doing is basically going through each player by position group, player by player, to give our binary vote, both Andrew and I, on whether we think the player deserves to be glazed, as the kids would call it, meaning we think that they've had a decidedly positive impact on our season so far this season, or hazed, meaning basically we think they've underperformed. And both of these are relative to where our expectations were coming into the season and sort of the role and impact that we thought that player was going to have.
And that's the important thing to do. It's not that everybody's getting graded on the same scale. It's really what our expectations were and have they lived up to that or not.
Yep, exactly. And as I flip to the first slide here, the one other administrative note I want to make is the majority of the slides throughout this presentation, and there are slides. So like Andrew mentioned, there is a visual component to this. So we recommend YouTube for the full experience, but we've also gone to great lengths to try to make sure that it's a good listening experience as well. So no pressure, enjoy it wherever you prefer. For those who are watching on YouTube, all of the photos, or almost all of the photos used throughout the presentation, were taken by Tide Talk's own Matt Kerwin, a man who needs no introduction at all, co-founder of Tide Talk, and we were all really pleased to get a media credential for this season, and Matt has really done a great job photographing all of the games so far. So we were really excited to use his photography. Shout out to Matt for doing that.
Definitely.
And that brings us to our first player. So getting into Glaze or Haze here, going to kick it to you first, Andrew. Ime Mabika, do you think Glaze or Haze for his season so far?
This was an easy one for me. There are a lot of tough ones in here, but IMA for me is definitely a Glaze. We didn't really know what the expectations were. I think we saw that it was an MLS pedigree defender coming in here, but the fact that he wasn't signed and really had been without a team since late in the fall, we didn't really hear about him training with this team or any other team. So we weren't, and in terms of the lead up into the season, so we didn't really know what to expect. But he's been great. I think he's really studied that defensive line, and I think he's someone that more than anything brings something that other players on the defensive line can't, which is really just line breaking passes, his ability to get the ball up the field into dangerous players' feet on the ground and not just booting it up. That's really been on full display. And the fact that he's a giant, even though he looks like he's running in slow motion, it's really hard to run past him. So been really solid defensively, and I think that he'll continue to grow into that role. So definitely a Glaze for me.
Perfectly said. I agree. Easy Glaze, and I don't think I have anything to add. You hit on the big stuff for me. So I'm just going to jump to the next player here, which is Frank Nadarse. I can lead with this one. I think I will have to go Haze for Frank for this season so far. I didn't have super high expectations for Frank because I think some of the flaws maybe in his defensive game started to show towards the end of last season, or at least become more apparent to most of us. I think he's been pretty good this season, but with a few kind of obvious mistakes leading to goals in the early part. So if I was looking at maybe just the last month, I think I would actually feel differently. But looking at the full body of work for the season so far, again, it would have to be a Haze for me, but where are you landing on this one?
I'm with you. This is one of the tougher ones, and I do think he's been a little bit better in these last few games too, which has made this decision a little bit tougher. But he was on a really good trajectory late last year. I think there were some people that had fears that he might get looked at by MLS clubs, if not now or in the future. I don't think he's been at that level, and by far my biggest issue with him is the lack of focus that he seems to have at way too many points. So he could have a really good game, but he has one or two mental lapses where he doesn't close on a defender or just loses his man in space. And those are the types of things that lead to goals. And given the lack of goal scoring opportunities this team has created, the defense needs to be really solid, which might be a little bit unfair for them, but it also exposes Frank's mistakes a little bit more. So I want to see more out of him. I'm hoping these last couple of games are a trend getting back into the Frank that we saw last year. But up until this point in the season, I would lean Haze.
Yeah, I think if we revisit Glaze or Haze at the 2/3 season mark, I would love to see this be a Glaze.
I could easily see it being that too. Yeah.
How do you feel, Rio Hope Gund season
This
so
is an
far?
easy one, right? This is an easy one. So
Unanimous Glaze.
You couldn't have much lower expectations for Rio, considering the fact that he signed a 25-day contract at a time the team was just desperate for bodies on defense. And then the 25-day contract extended and expired, I should say. And we weren't sure if he was going to get extended or not. And I thought we did. I think we all thought he did pretty good in that 25-day stretch. I don't know that he necessarily blew us away, but we thought he was worthy of of that contract. And then he got it, and it feels like he's really settled in and been comfortable in that role to the point where when he's not in the starting lineup, I think most of us feel a little bit sad. There's a lot of mouths to feed now on defense, which is a good thing. But Rio's been very solid defensively. He's been in that right fullback type of role where he's been able to participate in the attack on the wing without getting too far up, but been solid on defense too. So definitely a Glaze for me. I think he's been awesome.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I'm going to repeat one of the worst dad jokes that I made over the weekend to you all, which is we bought a plant at Home Depot and the brand was Rio. The tagline said, "Relax, it's Rio." And I sent it to you guys and said, "This is how I feel when the opponent's coming down the left wing." He's so reliable defensively, especially. I don't worry when someone's running at him. I feel like he's got it covered, and that's rare for a defender for me. So
yeah, and he's not a big dude
Glaze.
too, so he does pretty well there. It's amazing how 2 months ago, a month and a half ago, we either didn't know who he was or didn't really have any expectations of him really being like an everyday contributor. And now when he's not in the lineup, we're like I said, a little bit sad. So props to him. Hopefully he continues this trend.
Absolutely. Grant Stoneman. This is another tough one. I mean, I'm on the Haze side for this one, really for similar reasons to Frank, where I feel like on the season, Stoneman's been decent, but he's had just like enough lapses in key moments that I can't look at the body of work over the first 2.5 months here and say anything other than Haze. I think a thing that worries me a little bit with Stoneman is that it hasn't just been positioning that's been shaky. It's been some of the passing out of the back that's been a little bit shaky. And a couple of times I feel like he's kind of got like turned in a way that I don't remember seeing last season. That just makes me worried a little bit. And then also I think my expectations for Stoneman are a little bit higher because he's sort of the experienced veteran in the back line who should kind of be organizing everybody. And him too, I think it's been better over the last few games. I think he had a really good game 2 or 3 matches ago where he was just everywhere defensively and on the ball. But again, first third of the season on the whole, Haze for me.
Yeah, this is another really tough one that I've gone back and forth on, even with me just trying to decide what I want for this segment. I think I'm going to go Glaze. And a large part of that is my expectations for him weren't super high. Like someone like Frank, and then we'll get to some of these other players, we expected them to, if not maintain the level they were at, actually improve. I didn't expect that from Grant. I think he's a very okay, solid defender, relatively dependable, but he doesn't excite me in the same way that Aime does, or when Frank has his good streaks, or some of these other players. So when thinking about what my ideal defensive line was going into the year, like it's not like I was locked in with Grant. So for me, being this kind of like a mid defender in my eyes, I think that he's done what he needs to do. And really those defensive mistakes have been pervasive throughout the entire defensive line, particularly those guys that have returned, which is weird. You know, the guys that are in the system, granted there's a bit of shifting in the system, but the guys that should have comfort with the people around them are the ones that are making those mental lapses the most. He is included in that. But I think I lean more toward Glaze just because my expectations weren't that high. And he does feel like someone that has very varying expectations depending on who you talk to. So I think it's just a matter of what you and I expected out of him going into the year.
Yeah, for sure. Our first split decision here took us 4 or 5 players.
Yeah.
How about Karifa? Yeah, this is a tough one because we haven't seen him play we haven't seen him start in several weeks.
Yeah, luckily he just came back, and we got to see a little bit of him recently coming off the bench. But we're really judging him off of the player that he was prior to the injury. And this another one for me where my expectations, this is similar to Frank. My expectations were higher for Karifa. He was someone who I didn't love in the early part of last year, and then he ended up just being a rock for this team, played the most minutes on the team. No matter how much rotation Connor was doing last year, Karifa just never got rotated. Like he just kept playing because he was doing his job. And even though he wasn't great at distribution, everything else in his game was pretty good. I can't say that for when we've seen him so far this year. It feels like he's gotten turned around a lot. He's lost guys in space. He gets burned too quickly. He still has those same distribution issues where he doesn't know where to pass the ball and it just goes backwards or sideways. Overall, I think his level of play just hasn't been high enough. And my expectations were pretty high. I thought this was gonna be another season of him just being, a markered in name on the starting 11. And now I'm looking at it being like, I don't know if he's gonna get a starting role back. So to me, he's a Haze.
Yeah, I think I'll agree with you, and he certainly suffers from. I think again the defense as a whole started the year pretty rocky, and unfortunately for him, I don't think it's explicitly his fault, but he was here for that portion of the defense, and they've really kind of figured it out since he went out. Again, I don't think it's because he went out. I think it's other changes that happened at the same time, but again, the time that he has played, I think the defense has been shaky. So I agree with your points, and I'll also go Haze here. I thought his quick cameo at the end of the game this past Saturday, he looked quite good. So I'm ready to turn this one around as well.
He's been on the precipice of returning for a while now, so I'm hoping that he's getting that fitness back and he can return to the guy he was. And it'll be really interesting to see what these pairings look like on defense moving forward, because there's a few people that are worthy of a spot now.
For sure. Brings us to what I'm quite sure is a unanimous Glaze, but I will let you. You were maybe the earliest adopter on the Aldair Sanchez train, so I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, definitely a Glaze for me, as I'm sure he will be for you. He's been fantastic, and that first game that we saw him, we were sitting at the Guild together, and he blew me away. Not because of his defensive skills, I thought he was solid there, but his distribution, his ability to whip balls into dangerous spots, to actually put meaningful crosses to the other players on the team, to have meaningful crosses. Like how often were we bitching last year about these crosses just going absolutely nowhere? And all of his crosses presented danger. All of his free kicks outside the box presented danger, and he's been great. And I do firmly believe, this is my opinion, but I firmly believe that the reason that the team shifted to a four-man back line is because Kano doesn't want to take Alder off the field, and trying to figure out where Quizarro was going to fit. There really isn't a scenario where they can both play unless they transition to a four-man back line, and that allows him to do his thing, provide the service that he needs to, and he's been a mainstay on that defensive line. So he's been awesome. And I'm really excited to see, given that he's a young player, what his ceiling is going to be. And I'm excited to have him this year. Definitely Glaze.
Yeah, easy Glaze. I think set piece delivery as well has been really solid from him. And he's young, he's 22. So I almost, this is a player this year that I worry a little bit what the future could have for him, because he has been that good for us so far. He's got a high ceiling, could maybe higher than USL Championship.
Yeah, you teased you're worried about MLS calling in one of your recent player ratings, which I'm not quite at that level yet, but if he continues on this trajectory, I mean, it's certainly possible. He's fun to watch. I really like watching him, especially in our section 205 too, when they're attacking right to left, and you can kind of see him working that left flank. It's nice.
Absolutely. So it brings us to our midfielders. Actually, I can take Amos Shapiro Thompson. So I'm going Glaze here. I am going Glaze. I'm going reluctant Glaze.
I can feel the asterisk through the audio.
I'm well on the record with this. I love Amos. I think he's been a really valuable player for us this season. I'm a little lower on him than I think, like, where I hear a lot of the fan base being. And that doesn't mean that I'm low on him or that I don't like him. It means, like, I feel like a lot of people talk about him like up here, and I'm like here. I think he's great on the ball. He's hard to knock off the ball. So good and safe in possession, incredible on duels, like does not lose a duel. If he goes in for a ball, I just assume he's coming out with it 100% of the time. So the Mighty Mouse moniker that Tide Talk, I believe Tide Talk has dubbed him with, he's earned every bit of it. Really like his game. The only thing for me is I think he's limited going forward. He's shown flashes of getting forward and having a good shot from distance, and I like that. I'd like to see more of that, but until he's doing that regularly and making good progressive passes forward, I've continued to say, like, I think when Harivo comes in to replace Amos, we look a little more dangerous each time that's happened. So that's where I stand on it. It is a Glaze for me, but I'll let you rebut if you'd like.
That sounded like a Glaze. The two nice things you said about him. No, I'm a Glaze as well. I feel more strongly about him than you do, but not incredibly so. I mean, where I'm at with it is my expectations weren't incredibly high. I knew he's a guy with a really high motor, and he was just going to keep running and just be everywhere, and that's what he's been. He's a nuisance to play against. You can just see it when he's putting pressure on the back line. He's chasing people down. He's getting in passing lanes. And that's what we need. And really where he got most of his playing time was when we were really struggling to field healthy bodies and rested bodies, given how tight our schedule was and how many games we were playing. And I thought he did a tremendous job, to the point where now he's kind of in that rotation, and he's starting probably on average every other game. And that's not what I expected going into the year. So he's just fun to watch. When I'm watching the game there with my son, I'm pointing to him and saying that's why I want him to emulate, because of the fact that he just doesn't stop. And he's the smallest guy in the field, and my kid's a small guy too. So showing him, look, you can be an impactful player, meaningful player, even at that size, just by how hard you work, I think is a really cool thing. And I agree, he's not the most dangerous going forward. Unfortunately, we have a lot of those guys right now. Like, we haven't really found many that are dangerous going forward. So I think it's just a matter of perspective of what you need in that game. But for me, he's a Glaze because I wasn't really sure what to expect, but I think his contributions have been very positive, and I'll give a Glaze for that.
Fair enough. We move on to Clay Holstad, which I'm confident is a unanimous Glaze. And I don't know how much there is we can say about him that hasn't been said, but please feel free.
No, this is an easy one. He was my favorite player last year. He's my favorite player this year. He's lived up to the expectations that he set for himself last year. He dipped a little bit at the end of last year, and I think he's regained the form that he was beforehand. He's still dangerous from outside the box, and he just does everything. And I'm glad that we found a way to get him out of the right wingback spot and into the central area of the field, because that's where he is the most impactful, both in the defensive end, in the transition, and on offense, and outside the box. I think he is. I mean, if I had to pick an MVP for this year, he's on that short list, if not earning it. So definitely Glaze for me.
Yeah, he's looked fresh this season for sure.
And played a ton of minutes. Like he hasn't really rested.
I think he leads the team in minutes. If I was paying closer attention to our own slides, I could tell you for sure, but I'm pretty sure he leads the team in minutes played again.
Yeah, I believe it.
Brings us to Joe Brito. I'm happy to lead it, but you take it if you'd like.
You can lead it.
Yeah. So Joe Brito, man, this is another one. The complexion changed a little bit from the game last week, and I will explain why. I'm going to go Haze based on the season performance so far, and we haven't seen a ton of Brito minutes. I think both the role and the state of the games that he's being brought into mostly are not the version of Joe Brito that I mostly like to see. I don't think, and to the points you've made, we're not creating much. Nobody's creating much offense, so it's not a Brito problem. But I usually don't feel incredibly confident when he comes on as kind of the attacking super sub that it's going to lead to a goal. Obviously, in the Monterey Bay game where he scored an incredible goal, it did lead to a goal. So I'm happy to have been proven wrong in that instance, but I just don't think that's the best fit for his skill set. I do, and I've been saying this since last season, I do think the best fit for his skill set is coming in when we're up a goal or two, holding the lead. He never loses the ball in those positions. He wastes an incredible amount of time without being super cheap about it. And he doesn't waste attacking opportunities either. He's always looking for the goal. So I love him in that position. And that's exactly how he came on. And I thought had a really good performance just this past weekend. But it's the other position where, unfortunately, mostly he's been called upon this season when we're trailing a goal that I have a harder time with it. So, again, Haze for me here.
Yep, so copy paste for me. I mean, but I agree with you wholeheartedly. He's a Haze, and I think the biggest issue that we have, or that I have with Brito, is that I don't think he's creative enough to be able to contribute in the attacking third in the way that we need. And I would say that he's probably the most context dependent in terms of whether or not you like his performance in any given game. And that context is, how is the team? Are we up or are we down? You raised that point before, and I think it's spot on. Last year, in the early part of the year, I think many of us were calling for him to sit because we didn't like the positions that he was getting put in. We didn't think he was contributing enough. The team was struggling then offensively. When we found our form and he got the super sub role, he was awesome because we were protecting leads and he was chasing people down. We start the year this year, he's played in a few different positions. He's played up top. He's played as an attacking midfielder. It hasn't really worked. He hasn't been creative enough. And then this very most recent game, we had a lead against Pittsburgh, and he looked great because the role that he's able to play when we have the lead versus when we don't is completely different. And one suits him really well and one doesn't. And unfortunately, we've been more on the other side of needing to chase goals, and he hasn't been able to contribute there, which is why I put it at a Haze. I think if we're calling him a Glaze later on in the year, that's probably a good sign that the team is performing well.
Yeah, great point. Maxi Rodriguez, fair. Feel like we got a unanimous one here.
Yeah, that's a unanimous one. It does feel like this might be one of the more divided, or at least was in the early part of the year, across the fan base, because the expectations were so sky high for what he can bring. He was the first team all USL last year, and the team hasn't really been scoring goals. So it's easy to look at that and say, is he doing what we thought he'd be doing? But I think he has. He's brought a ton of leadership. You can see it even in this most recent game. that Pittsburgh game after that goal, which is a really well worked goal that he was a part of. He like this the second it ended, he was going over to talk to Quazero and was like pointing something out. Like the guy's always on the field, being that commander. Even though he doesn't have the captain's armband because it's Koke, he's for all intents and purposes the captain on the field, and he is just involved in everything. He's dropping all the way back to defense to pick up the ball. He's involved in the attack. But the dude is everywhere, defensively and offensively. The numbers haven't really been there, but I think that's more about the people around him than him. I think he's held up his end of the bargain, and for me, I think this is an easy Glaze, and I hope that he really starts to shine throughout the rest of the year once the rest of the team kind of gets its act together.
Yeah, totally agree. I think his numbers have been fine, and so it's a Glaze for me. I think the numbers have been pretty good. I underestimated his impact, like you mentioned, like the leadership qualities and sort of what he would bring on the pitch. I've been super impressed with that, especially watching in person. Like he is on the ref and his teammates every single play. Love that. Also, have to say it, absolutely loved that leading up to the Open Cup game against the Revs. He said he likes scoring against MLS teams, and he opened the scoring at Tidewater with a goal against the Revs. That was one of the coldest things just in the history of the sport.
And a hell of a goal, too. It was a banger.
Incredible goals.
Yeah.
I would love to see more at Tidewater from any player, honestly.
Yeah,
but,
I'll just take any.
Yeah, just love goals. Mark Ibarra, tough one. I lean Glaze based on haven't seen enough. And it's hard because he was also playing in I'm basically giving him the benefit of the doubt here because we know what a good player he is from last season. He was in the team during the rockiest part of our season, which was probably those first 4 or 5 games. And he was getting jumped around. He was coming off the bench. He was starting as the lone holding midfielder. He was paired with Taimu Okiyoshi. Like, there's just been no consistency to it, and I'm really waiting for him to come back so that we can start to see him play consistently in that holding midfield role where he was so good last year. And I have nothing but confidence that he'll deliver the way that he did last year and maybe solve some of our problems. So haven't really seen it yet, but he's Mark Ibarra, and I love him, and I'm going Glaze.
I'm the same way. I have the same opinion you did. He just hasn't played as much as we would have expected even before he got hurt. But when he played, I thought he played to his level. It was just the circumstance around him of how he was being utilized or the fact that he wasn't really getting consistent starts. Like all of those things were just a bit odd. So excited for him to come back. I hope he comes back soon. But I think he's done what we expect Mark Ibarra to do. So for me, it's a Glaze.
Yep. Zach Harivo, how are you feeling so far?
I said earlier that my favorite player last year was Clay. I think Harivo was probably my second favorite. What I really liked when he came in was just how much of a command he had for the game and understanding for the game, knowing where to be, had a very calm presence, was able to take the ball, turn, pick out somebody, dribble away from pressure. Like he just looks like a veteran that was just really cool, calm, and collected, and it's what this team needed, and that really sparked the adult midfield that Ryan trademarked last year. And I don't feel like I've gotten a lot of that from him this year. I do think it's happened in spurts, but I think there's been way too many moments where he just looks a bit lost. He picks out the wrong pass. He's a little bit too clumsy with the ball. Some of that happened when he was playing on defense, which wasn't his fault. He was, the most capable person to cover when we needed people on that defensive line. So I don't fully fault him for being a little bit out of sorts there. But he just hasn't really quite hit the same notes that he was hitting last year. I'm hoping it's starting to turn. It feels like it is a little bit because, to your point, I think he is one of the more dangerous players in that midfield to kind of help transition into the offense. But he's underwhelmed a little bit for me, which is why I go Haze.
I'm going to disagree with you on this one. It is a Glaze for me. I agree with a lot of what you said. I do think he's had some shaky moments. I mostly think they've come while he was being played out of position. In his appearances in position, where he's sort of playing like a box-to-box, almost slightly more attacking midfield role, which is where I think his best position is. I think he's been really good. I mentioned earlier during Amos, like I actually think our attack looks more put together when Zach is out there. I think he is much more like tight, intricate, progressive passing with any combination of Noah, Maxi, Dikwa, and Quizera. Like, I think he links up well with all of those players. So, and I think he's done it this season already. So it is Glaze for me, although I agree with a lot of the points that you made.
Yeah, with a lot of these, it's tough to compare relative to the options on the field now versus relative to what we saw last year. I think relative to the options, he's been among our better options. Relative to last year, I think he's underwhelmed a little bit. So I think it's just a matter of perspective there. Yeah. And then
Taimu Okioshi.
Taimu, relative to expectations, right? That's the key phrase here. The expectations were minimal when he signed, relatively minimal leading into the preseason, even though it seemed like he was getting involved in a lot of the first team starts and stuff in those preseason games. And then shot up through the roof when you hear after the first game or two, Kano and others talk about the role that this guy's going to play and how impressive that he's been. He just hasn't impressed me nearly enough to really hold down a spot where I feel like he should be playing more. And I feel like over the past 5-6 weeks, we haven't seen him a ton. He hasn't really been starting, which I think to me means that Kano agrees that he's not really holding up or playing at the level that might have been expected from early year. So when I'm looking at Glaze or Haze, I'm going to go Haze because I'm matching it up against what we were kind of told going into the year when he was starting to get minutes, and I feel like that's part of why Ibarra was out of sorts because Taimu kept getting started over him, and it wasn't really working. So I'm hoping he's a young player, right? He was just playing at Marshall last year in the NCAA championship. So hopefully he starts to find himself a little bit and become a bigger piece of the team. But for now, I think he's underwhelmed relative to what I thought we would be getting at the start of the year.
That's fair, but similar to Haribo, I'm going to say I agree with your talking points about Taimu, but I'm going Glaze because when we signed him, my expectations were that he was the third, or I guess fourth if you include Will Meyer, but the third in the trio of Kevin Vang, Cole Dewhurst, and Taimu. I thought that was like the post-college, train hard, push the first team players, but won't see the pitch guy. And I didn't really hear anyone other than Ryan banging the drum of like this guy was going to be majorly involved. So, and I know that you've corrected me on that, and I think some coach and some players were saying he would be involved. So anyway, I'm going to go Glaze because I had no expectations, and I'm comfortable with him on the pitch, even though I agree with your points about like I don't know if he needed to be starting against Charleston at the first game of the season, for example.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're getting up into this is the bridge between midfielders and forwards. This is Jojea Quizera. You have, I think, the strongest opinions on Quizera, maybe in the whole fan base. So I will let you take this one.
I dubbed it recently as me being the certified Jojea hater on Tide Talk. And that really stems back to earlier in the year, last year, where I saw a lot of those flaws that he had. His first touch, I think, lets him down often. Maybe my biggest gripe is he's too slow to recognize a play as it's developing and putting the ball where it needs to be. It feels like he kills the momentum or stops the play way too often. And then he went on fire last year when he left for international break. He had a good rest of the year. So I was happy to see him on the field. I think he was dangerous, but I think when he was most dangerous, he was interplaying with Noah really well. And now that he's a bit more isolated in terms of having that playing partner and not having Noah there, and it's relying more on just his pure skill and being able to beat guys and pick out passes, I just don't think he's had it. He had a nice goal this past weekend against Pittsburgh. I think it's his off foot, right? I mean he scored that with his right foot. So credit to him there. But I think his crossing is not nearly good enough. Whether he's played an inverted winger on the right side or playing on the natural left side, it just feels like his crossing isn't there. He hasn't really been able to beat guys unless he has a full head of steam, which to his credit, sometimes he picks up that head of steam because he's able to win the ball on defense and then turn around and go. But when the defender has time to square him up, they're just hanging on his left foot because they know he's not going to do anything with it. So I've been very disappointed in him. I really hope he turns around. We kind of need him to. But Haze for me, I think this was easy.
Yeah, I'll go Haze here as well. I think he's had a fine season. I don't think he's been as good as last season. I think he hasn't gotten consistency at one position yet either. He especially hasn't gotten consistent minutes at left wing back, which is where most people would say is where he thrived last season, whether or not you agree with that. Yeah, I think he's been okay. I think he's tied for the lead on the team in chances created, which isn't saying much because we haven't been creating many chances. And we always say too, like, I do feel like he also gets into a lot of dangerous positions and then doesn't create a chance. So like there might be 2 of those for every 1 chance created. I think he's been fine. I would like to see him get some more consistent minutes on the left. I think that will help. But he's off for international duty this week at the time that we're recording this. So let's hope that he comes back as the same Quezera that he did last season after his first international break. But I will agree with the Haze.
Yeah.
Noah Fuson, this is tough. For me, it's certainly a Haze. I just think he's missing a lot of what made him so special in the second half of last year. It just hasn't quite clicked for him. The positional thing that applies to him as well. He has not had consistent minutes at any one position. I think he was at his best last season after we started playing him as the second striker off of JJ Williams, and a lot of times he was dropping in behind JJ and or floating out wide to the wings. So he had a lot of freedom in the role that he was playing. It's been a lot more rigid for him this year, and as a result, I think his play it's looked like he's lacking a decent amount of confidence and sort of the decision making. Or I should say the decision making hasn't looked good, and it looks like it's due to a lack of confidence for me. It's just one of those things where like a passing lane will open up and he'll try to shoot or dribble, or he'll have space in front of him and he'll pick the wrong pass. It's just I feel very strongly that he's going to snap out of it, and that we'll find probably the best spot for him in this system. But that's how the season's gone for him so far. So I have to go with Haze, sadly.
Yeah, I'm a Haze as well for all the same points that you referenced. The storyline of his season feels to mirror what it was last year. Not having a consistent spot that he was playing in, the team trying to find itself offensively, his confidence not being quite there. I think he's a player that maybe above all else in the team thrives on confidence, and he hasn't really gained it. I do think the point of freedom is a great one. He had a lot more freedom last year. I do think he was in that his best self when he's in that supporting role as opposed to being isolated on one side. I do push back a little bit on the consistency on position for most of the season for both him and Quezera, because the inconsistency has come in the fact that they've been flip-flopping him across sides of the field because nothing's really worked. So it's the same position playing on the opposite side. Early on in the year, he was in that wingback spot. I think he might have moved to the central midfield at one point, if I recall. For the most part, he's gotten that winger role, and whether it's the left or the right, flip-flopping with Quezera, neither has really worked. So I said it before, I do think that both Noah and Quezera were at their best last year when they got to interplay with each other, because they both have a lot of danger to their game when defenses are trying to square them up, and they're able to play off of each other really well. And they don't have each other to play off of right now, and there's no one really that's supporting them in the way that they need to. So I do think Noah will find it. He's a very good player. He's an excellent player, one of the best or most skilled players on the team. He's got a bright future, just hasn't found himself yet.
Yep, fair enough. Brings us to JJ Williams. I suspect a unanimous decision here, but where are you on this season so far?
Easy Glaze. He's been great. Very excited to have him back when he does return. I think he's been all the best parts of his game that we saw last year. He's exhibited already in all of his games this year where he's played. His hold-up play, his aerial duels, he's finished really well. He's just been an integral part, and it sucks so bad that he got hurt right before the stadium opened for him and for us, because the offense has just fallen apart with him gone. So excited to have him back when he does return. Easy Glaze.
I don't know if there was any combination of words the week of the stadium opening that could have bummed me out worse than reading the message that JJ Williams was injured. Like, that felt like a shot to the heart. Like, it's traumatic thinking about it. Completely agree with the Glaze. Like, he's easily one of the most important players to the system that we're playing right now. We can obviously see the impact that it's had on our season without him. Can't wait to have him back. He was having a great season before he got hurt. So easy Glaze.
Yeah. Hopefully he picks it back up. Yeah.
Hopefully. Albert Dikwa.
Yeah, the much maligned Albert Dikwa. Haze for me. We'll come right to the chase. I just don't think he's performed at the level that we need him to, given his stature on this team, given his contract that we can all assume, given his pedigree as a Golden Boot winner and MVP of the league, he just doesn't do enough on offense and specifically with scoring goals. He did set one up very nicely, took the ball down in this last game, brought the ball down well on a long ball, had that very nice back heel flick over to Quazera, who was able to bury that. There's just not enough of that, and he doesn't seem like the dangerous striker who put up 20 goals 2 years ago. He doesn't even seem like the same striker that he was late last year, where he seemed to be scoring a little bit more freely. I'm sure he's very tense. I'm sure it just hasn't really been working. He does most games put in a lot of effort, so it's not like he's not hustling out there. Aside from that one last game against Pittsburgh at home, where I feel like he wasn't running much. Other than that, I think he's working hard, and just the team is in a funk. And what you would hope for in your goal scorer is that even when the team is in a funk, that you just bury a couple that other people probably shouldn't be getting to kind of keep your team afloat, and he's not doing that. So when the team isn't scoring, it all goes back to him, fairly or unfairly. But he needs to do more. And even when JJ comes back, he has to do better.
Yeah, I'll agree with the Haze. I think the end product in the final third has not been good enough this season. I do think it's trending in the right direction. In his last performance, he was the most fouled player on the pitch by a mile, and so I'm not changing my vote based on one performance, but like that's what I need to see from him when he's not scoring goals, is like winning duels and or winning fouls in bad or good either attacking positions or bailing us out on the defensive end. That's exactly what he did against Pittsburgh, which is a gross team to have to do it against, but like that made me feel much better. I mean, I enjoyed that performance from him. So when the goals aren't coming, let's see more of that. That hasn't been the case this season so far. So it is a Haze for me. Brings us to the goalkeepers. This has to be a unanimous Glaze. Koke Vegas.
He's been awesome. He's playing better now, I think, than at any point, or really at any point last year. I was going to say, like, he's been great. He's done a really good job of controlling the ball. His distribution has been good. His reaction saves have been awesome. He's had a good command of the box. So he's been great. We learned going into this very last game that he tweaked something, and we're hoping that it's minor and that he won't be out for long. So we'll see what that is, but it's a shame if that's the case, because he's been really in peak form in my eyes. So definitely Glaze.
Yeah, easy Glaze. 4 clean sheets in 10 matches is beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to bring us to the last player. So Jackson Lee, I'm going to lead because I am invoking my right to change my vote on this one based on his most recent performance, because we've only seen 4 showings from Jackson. This was one. So that's 25% of the sample size I just saw this past weekend. So I'm going Glaze. That was a very good performance from him, and it changes the whole complexion of his season. Really, I think the big question mark was how would he bounce back from that, if we're being honest, crappy goal conceded to lose to the Revs in the Open Cup. And he bounced back with a clean sheet on the road against a team that's been the boogeyman for us over the last 2 years. Now, when I look at his numbers for the season, he's been great. Same number of goals conceded per 90 minutes as Koke. So how can I not Glaze? I'm glazing.
I asked you after your last player ratings if you were going to change your mind on any players. You promised me no. You lying bastard. You lied. No, I mean, Jackson for me is a Glaze as well. He's had a couple of rough moments or plays that he should have done a little bit better, but he hasn't made any egregious mistakes. And I think he's largely been solid. And it's hard because you don't get a lot of playing time. It's not consistent. It could be he might have to be ready. I mean, we don't know what this Koke injury is going to be and how long Koke is going to be out for. So if that's the case, then we'll see if Jackson can really take the reins here and push for more time, because I think going into the year, we thought that he was going to be someone who pushes Koke for more time. Koke's just been great, so he hasn't got a lot of time aside from the cup game. So Glaze for me.
Awesome. That brings us to our 2 bonus Glaze or Haze slides. So first up, wanted to just get your quick Glaze or Haze on Centerville Bank Stadium, aka Tidewater Landing. We have played 4 matches there so far. Average attendance just over 9,000 people, but 2 losses and 2 draws have been the results. So how are you feeling so far?
Definite Glaze. It is glorious. The stadium is fantastic. Our seats are great. There's no bad seats in the house. It's just a fun place to watch a game. The atmosphere has been tremendous. We've had good crowds there. The team has brought the energy. They just haven't gotten the results, but the stadium itself is going to be a fortress for us, I think, over the long haul.
Yeah, I'm glazing. I biked down last Sunday to go watch Puerto Rico versus Nicaragua international friendly just because I wanted to be at the stadium and watch soccer there, and I couldn't wait until this weekend for the home game. So I'm glazing. The record is tragic, to be perfectly honest. The record is horrific. I can't believe we haven't seen a win yet. It's been open for a month as of today. So that really sucks, but the stadium's incredible.
Yeah,
Love it.
just 2 goals. And there's either been the rain or the threat of rain every match so far. So
Oh,
it'll be nice when we actually have a nice day to be out there.
yeah, and this weekend's not looking better. This weekend maybe is the worst so far. So,
Oh,
and then lastly, Connor Smith. We talked about, so we can split this one. We're trying to keep this moving. We can split this one. We want to split it into Kano, the GM, and Kano, the coach, which is a concept I believe first popularized by Craig of Club Collector app. I know our friend FQB has also used that kind of delineation a lot. But where are you glazing or hazing Kano, the GM, and Kano, the coach?
I think this has major roots to Bill Belichick too. This is a conversation that we've been having a long time
Yeah.
about the Patriots. So it's kind of the GM Haze. We all saw what the shortcomings of this team were in terms of the roster building process in the offseason. Loaded up on midfielders, no third striker option once Mark Doyle left. On defense, it felt like we're a little bit light. Well, then on defense, we started to have injuries and red cards, and we needed to bring in Rio on a 25-day contract, and then ultimately bring him in, and then I May Mabika having to bring him in as well. So I guess in that sense, from a GM perspective, great to bring him in, but I brought both those guys in, but it felt like it was late, and it probably cost us results earlier on in the year. And then we're stuck in the situation here where there's no one pushing for Dikwa's role or for time away from Dikwa. When Dikwa has to sit because he was injured and had to come back and had to play limited minutes, there was no one to put in there. At one point, we saw Maxi and Brito playing up front because there were literally no other options. So the team building of this, I don't like what he's done there. I think he assumed there'd be a lot of versatility across all these different players because that's the way he likes to build a team. But we were lacking in those areas, and I think it's cost us on both ends, both on offense and defense. Kano, the coach, I will also give a Haze to because given whatever the limitations are in the roster, he hasn't found the way to unlock this team from an offensive perspective. And we started off the year very poor defensively. We were making a lot of mistakes. The team just wasn't really in it to the point where like we're 2 or 3 games in and they had to have players only meetings. Like if we're 2 or 3 games into the year and it's a players only meeting, then what does it say about what the coach is doing in terms of setting up his team tactically and getting them ready to play? It didn't feel like they were ready on the defensive end. And now they're struggling on offense, and there's been no answers. So I do have faith in him. I do think once we get some pieces back, it's going to click. I do think we're going to be formidable going down the stretch and into the playoffs. But to this point in the season, through the first third, I haven't been overly impressed with Kano, the coach, either.
Yeah, I think I have to agree with you on both of them. I don't have a ton to add. On the coaching side, I guess one I do want to give credit to, and we can say this now, this week, we couldn't have last week, but we are top of our group in the Jägermeister Cup, 2 games into the group stage. We have 2 home games left to go against a horrible USL Championship team in Hartford and then a mediocre League One team in Portland coming to Tidewater. So again, if we revisit this segment 2/3 of the way into the season and we win our group, and we're hovering around that home playoff line in the Eastern Conference, I'll feel better about a Glaze. But I think I'll agree with the double Haze Kano with you on this one. Okay, that is going to bring us to our next segment. This is tier talk. So again, this is kind of your traditional tier format with a little some Tide Talk terminology laced in here. So I'm going to flip over to that if you want to introduce the tiers, Andrew.
Yeah, and we'll go rapid fire through these and through the remaining segments. For the tier talk, the tiers that we have, there are 6 of them. First tier at the top of the chain here is absolute dog. So it's a phrase that you've heard a lot if you listen to Tide Talk and Ryan specifically. So this is really the players in the context it's been used at Tide Talk. It's really more about who's put in the most amount of effort and who's been the most relentless. Here, we're going to use it in the context of who's just really been playing the greatest. The next tier down is 7 out of 10. So for those of you who read Timmy's player ratings blogs, he typically gives a 7 out of 10 when someone does pretty well, but not amazing. So we've hazed for it a little bit there. So this is kind of like the next step down. So good, not great. Next tier is mid. So right in the middle, just as it sounds. Next tier down is fraud watch. So very strong words. It's a term that we've used, but really what this has been is who hasn't really performed at the level that they should be performing. Not calling them frauds, but just saying fraud watch for this tier. Next one is, does he even exist? There's a lot of players here where we don't know that they actually exist or that the football version of them actually exists. So we're going to have a few players in here. And then lastly, just hasn't played enough. And there's a couple examples here where we have seen them. We know they exist. We've seen them on a football field before, but they just haven't got enough minutes for us to be able to tier them appropriately. So let's kick things off.
Perfect. And I think we've shared our in-depth thoughts on a lot of the players. So we should be able to, like you said, zip through these. But coincidentally, first, these are not grouped by position. This is chaotic sorting order, but Aime Mabika is first again. So I lean 7 out of 10. Where are you at?
I'm going absolute dog. I just think
it's a small sample size, man.
It is a small sample size, but he's been really good. And he's been, like, I want to see him out there every game. When he wasn't here this last week, which again, hopefully it's not a serious injury. I was sad because I think he brings a lot to the table, especially in that distribution when we struggle to create. So absolute dog for me.
All right, I'm going absolute dog, but I want to overrule you on one of these later on. We'll see who it is.
You got one in the bag now.
Yeah. Albert Dikwa. This is
just call for what it is, man. Just do it. Call for what it is.
So I think he goes in fraud watch. I feel bad about it, but I think the expectations when we signed Albert Dikwa was, that we were getting the 2023 Golden Boot 20 goal scoring player. I think it was a splashy signing, maybe the biggest of that offseason. And I don't think he's hit that level. So relative to the expectations, I don't think the performance has been there. I said previously, I think it's trending in the right direction. I definitely want to revisit this segment. Whether or not we do the last one, we'll see. But this was segment I want to revisit with where we left them this time around. And I no one will be happier than me to move Albert Dikwa to absolute dog tier based on his performance over the next 10 games.
I think we all want to see him work his way out of that tier, but he hasn't given us what we need from him, and all the respect in the world for what he's done and the effort that he puts in, but he just hasn't performed. We need a goal scorer or a goal creator. And there's been some flashes of that, like this past game, but it hasn't happened nearly enough. And when we're down JJ Williams, even more reliance on him, he hasn't gotten it done. So that's the tier he belongs in.
Yeah. Alder Sanchez, absolute dog for me.
I agree. I don't think he has to be at that top level.
No argument.
He's forced himself into this lineup and he's staying there. So
yeah. So Amos, I go mid-tier based on my feelings about him that I previously shared. I think he's just limited in the sense of going forward. I love what he brings. If you're gonna say 7 out of 10, I will concede. I would be happy with that.
No, I'd go mid. I mean, when we did Glaze or Haze, it was really relative to where expectations were going in. And while there's an element of it here, I think this is really more of grading everybody for true performance. And it's been between a 7 out of 10 and a mid. But yeah, I'm good with mid.
Okay. Clay Holstad, I think the tier, it was created for him, right?
Yeah. It's the definition of Clay Holstad is absolute dog.
Yep. And then I think Does He Even Exist Here was created for Cole Dewhurst. Is that correct?
No, that was for our special right wing back that I've never seen. Yeah, but Cole Dewhurst, you and I were in Westchester and saw him step onto the field, and I still don't know that he actually exists or that he even played in that game because he was so anonymous and played so few minutes. So I'm still sticking with Does He Even Exist?
I went back and checked. He did play 3 minutes in that game, but neither of us can remember it. There was a mysterious man slipping me Jägermeister shots because it was the Jägermeister Cup, like nips in the state. I don't know why. I still haven't asked how or why that happened, but
it might have been Cole Dewhurst. We don't even know. It could have been.
It could have honestly been. It did look like him. So okay, I think we said Danny Rivera is going in. Does he even exist?
Doesn't even
We haven't seen him kick a ball.
We haven't seen him kick a ball. We've seen he was just in the community with Kevin Bang and stuff, but I'm not convinced that's not a paid actor. I still think that Connor was catfished and that Danny Rivera doesn't actually exist, and they're so embarrassed by it that they're just paying someone to walk around pretend to be injured all year long and just hope nobody asks any questions.
Dude,
we don't know that.
Bob Lilly got him again.
Exactly.
Grant Stoneman is going in mid for me, unless you have any argument there.
I mean, my argument for Glaze or Haze is that he is mid. Like to me, that personifies his game. I don't think he's great. I don't think he's bad. I think he's mid.
I think he's better than mid. I think he's been mid this season.
Fair. Either way, this is where we land for this year.
Yeah. Hugo, I'm team has not played enough. Not does he even exist, because he's so tall and so muscular. He has to be a footballer, but I haven't seen him kick a ball, so I could go either way.
He's not played enough. Has he even touched the ball this year? Like we don't even know who he is. Like he's just been non-existent. So if you want to override me for that one, you can. But for me, I don't. All I've seen is pictures. I don't know who this dude is.
I'm not wasting my veto on this one. He'll go and does he even exist? Isaac and King has not played enough. I can't wait to see him play. It feels like he's so close.
And he was on the bench in Pittsburgh. So I'm really excited to get back.
Yeah. Jackson Lee, especially following his most recent performance, I feel is an easy 7 out of 10.
I think that's fair. That's where I put him.
Can't believe that's our first 7 out of 10. That's usually all that I give in the player ratings. So
yeah, this is like a bizarro world player rating.
Yeah. JJ.
Easy.
Is there a tier above absolute dog?
Yeah, the JJ Williams tier. Yep, absolutely dog for him.
Okay. Joe Brito feels like a contender for mid for me.
He's another one that I think defines mid. We talked about it before. Depending on the context, he might like good, he might like bad. I just don't think his skill level is at a place where he can really elevate the team. So mid.
All right. Jose Quezera. Like, I would love to use my override here because I feel he belongs in mid tier. I know you will want fraud watch, and I would feel pretty bad having Chico potentially alone in that tier. So I'm okay with putting him there if that's where you feel he belongs.
I think that's where he belongs. When we're at the stadium, there are only 2 players that make me scream and pull my hair out, and those are the 2. Like
there's photo evidence of this.
Yes, exactly. I lose my mind when they kill plays with their inability to touch the ball on the first touch correctly or get it to where it needs to go to keep an attacking movement moving fluidly. But again, like they should be some of our best players, and they're not there. So fraud watch for me for him as well.
Yeah, and again, I think it's like when you're looking at Quezera this season and you're like, what happened from last season? Like that's sort of what gets you in this tier. So
yeah.
Karifa Yao, mid.
Yeah, I was gonna say 7 out of 10, but I think mid might be more appropriate because he did have a lot of mistakes early on, and we never really got to the version of Karifa like we talked about earlier that we were expecting. So I think mid's the right answer here.
All right. Kevin Bang has not played enough.
Has not played enough. Definitely exists.
Can confirm exists. Yeah. Koke, dog.
Yeah, I'd say so. Again, I don't think he can play any better than he's been playing. So,
yeah. Ibarra, I argue for has not played enough because I don't think we've seen a large enough or consistent enough sample.
I'm with you. I agree.
Okay. Noah, I think has been mid this season.
Yeah, I say mid as well, and I think what keeps him on our fraud watch is he still participates in a lot of different areas, particularly on the defense. I think he's more of a victim of how he's been used and the lack of confidence than someone like Jojea, where I just don't know that he has some of the skills that can help him to elevate when he's getting through a slump. I think Noah will get there, but his performance, I think, has been mid.
Fair enough. Maxi, again, if we're honoring Ryan's terminology that we adopted this tier from, I think Maxi can't go anywhere but absolute dog.
Agreed. Yeah, I think he's been very good and certainly a dog for this team.
Yep. Taimu, mid?
Yeah, it's hard to like. I haven't loved his performances, but they haven't risen to the level of us saying it's fraud watch, especially given the fact that he was just playing college last year. Like I think mid's the right answer.
Yeah. So Frank, I'm actually kind of leaning 7 out of 10.
That's where I'm at. He's had some really good games, some really good moments, but what's killed him are just these bad mental lapses. But on the whole, he's been good. So I'd say 7 out of 10.
Yep. All right. Will Meyer. Does he exist?
I think it does even exist. He's been on the bench many times, but I don't know that I've actually seen him with my eyeballs on the bench. Like I don't know that he's actually there. So we'll go. Does even exist?
We got to check on Saturday if we can get eyes on him.
Yeah, exactly.
Like maybe warming up, kicking a ball.
Yeah, maybe.
Rio. I could be persuaded dog or 7 out of 10.
That's a tough one. I mean, I said earlier we're kind of grading these based on just like true performance as opposed to pure expectations. If it was expectations, I would say absolute dog. I think he's been very good and very solid, but I don't think he's somewhat like he's getting rotated, right? It's not like he's just been the staple of the starting lineup. So for me, I'd go 7 out of 10.
I agree. And then Zach Harivo. I also lean 7 out of 10 here, but if you felt mid based on I'm basing this on your Glaze or Haze notes, I could be persuaded, or I could use my veto on you right now and just put him in 7 out of 10.
This is our last player. You can veto and do whatever you want here. But I think I would also go 7 out of 10 because he has like
so I'm not vetoing.
Yeah. Yeah, you can use it for the next time around to cash that in later. He hasn't been bad. I just think relative to what I was hoping to get out of him, he's been a little bit underperforming in my eyes, but he's been a good player and he deserves to play more. So 7 out of 10.
Yeah. All right. So we'll recap it quickly. I don't know how well you can see the thumbnails, so I can just read through them if you want. So absolute dog tier, we landed with Aime Mabika, Alder Sanchez, Clay Holstad, JJ Williams, Koke Vegas, and Maxi Rodriguez. Feel pretty good about that. 7 out of 10, we have Jackson Lee, Frank Nodarse, Rio Hope Gund, and Zach Harivo. Mid tier, we have Amos Shapiro Thompson, Grant Stoneman, Joe Brito, Karifa Yao, Noah Fuson, and Taimu Okiyoshi. Fraud watch tier, we have Jojea Quizera and Albert Chico Dikwa. Does he even exist here? This might be the most important tier. We have Cole Dewhurst, Danny Rivera, Hugo Bacharach, and Will Meyer. And then has not played enough, Isaac King, Kevin Vang, and Mark Ibarra. I feel pretty good about it. I think that looks like a pretty balanced list and where I would have wanted us to net out.
Yeah, I think if you show this to most people who've been following the team, I can't imagine there's going to be major disagreements there. I think it's an appropriate list.
Awesome. Yeah, we do have this template created. So if anyone's dying to tier out the roster and send it to us, feel free. We're happy to share the link. I don't know if anyone else is that level of sick, but feel free. Happy to share it.
Matt was asking people to send your favorite starting 11 after that last Pittsburgh game. So those same sickos, send us your tiers. We can post this link somewhere.
I think it might have just been me and 1 or 2 other people. But all right, getting us back to the slides here and introducing the next segment. Do you want to? No, I will give it to you to speak about this.
Yeah. What a slide. So for those of you listening, Matt Kerwin, several months ago at this point, created this slide called the mailroom with me and Timmy. So the idea here, we're not going to do this segment today, but we want to do that in future episodes here where we'll take in either requests to dig into stuff more, certain topics, or could just be general questions about the team or whatever else you have on your mind. There was one that we had been asked before we even announced that we were doing this mailroom about getting an update from regarding all the former REFC players and where they're at in the new homes and how they're doing. So that's something that we'll do in this next episode. But if you think of any other things that you want us to touch on or dig into, either a deep dive or something more topically, definitely let us know. Hit us up either in Discord or comment on wherever you might be seeing this or listening to this, and let us know what you think. So future segment for us in the mailroom. Next segment here is Start, Sit, Sell. So this is the soccer equivalent of a game that you might have heard of called Marry, Fuck, Kill. And the idea here is that we put 3 players that are similar in nature, and we're trying to be forced to make decisions of, kind of who your favorite is or least favorite, and put them in these buckets of who would you start, who would you sit, and who would you sell. So we have 3 different ones to get through. And this very first one here is Central Defenders. And we're looking at Ami Mabika, Grant Stillman, and Frank Nadarce. Start, sit, sell. Timmy, what you got?
So in the spirit of sort of the original game with sell in this case being like get rid of, not how I would interpret it in football terms, meaning like who can I get a good price for? Based on that, I'm going start Ime Mabika. I think he's come in and been great. Sit Frank, meaning I want to keep him around. I want him to get minutes off the bench, if you will. And then I guess in this case, sell Grant Stoneman, who I just think I think's had a rough season so far. And I think there's more upside with Ime and Frank.
Right. That was my same one as well, so I'm going to tweak it a little bit. I do think the sell one for me is the easiest one, where it's Grant. I'd rather have Ime and Frank in there. And I talked glowingly about Ime earlier. I want him to start many games. I do think Frank's a little bit more versatile in that he can play in that wingback role. He can play in more advanced positions and play centrally. So even though my original vote here was Ime, just for the sake of switching things up, I'll go start Frank, just given the fact that he can move around relatively easily within the context of a game or in future lineups, and sit Ime. All right, next is Ryan's children. So these are all players that Ryan's have adopted for his own. So he's been in love with Maxi Rodriguez and Noah Fuson and Clay Holstead. Really keen eye for talent, that Ryan. This is why he's adopted these guys. He told me recently to watch out for some kid in Spain named Lamine Yamal, and that he's a really up-and-comer, so he's trying to adopt him for his own as well. So really appreciate Ryan, being at the forefront of picking out who the players to watch are that are a little bit under the radar. So
he really digs deep for these.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, these aren't easy names to find. So Maxi, Noah, and Clay, 3 of the best players and most skilled players on the team. What do you got, Timmy?
This one's really hard. Start Clay. I think Clay has been the best of this trio so far, maybe the best on our team. No, this isn't that hard. That sucks. I wish this was harder. Then I would sit Maxi and sell Noah based on the way we're taking this game to be. How about you?
I think the thought process is similar, where at least similar to the last one, my sell is the same. I think based on where we are in this point in the season and with the way the performances have gone, I think I'd sell Noah. And then I would start, as much as I love Clay, I'd start Maxi just because I think his leadership that he brings onto the field, and really what he commands from the rest of the team, but also his drive and getting involved in so many places. Which is, we can say the same thing about Clay. So it's really kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
Yeah.
So I'll say start Maxi. I mean, he's proven pedigree, first team all USL. Sit Clay, sell Noah.
Awesome. Last one
here are the newcomers, and we excluded Maxi. So really 3 of the newer newcomers. I mean, Mabika's back in this trio, Aldir Sanchez, and then Rio Hoop Goins. So tough one here. All players that have done well. So what do you think, Timmy?
This is a tough one. I kind of have to just like pick the easy one for me and work off of that. So start Aldir is the easy one for me. Largest sample size for him. He's playing in a position where we really don't have anyone else who can fill that role at the moment. So start Aldir. I think then I am sitting Ime because he has been that good in the few performances that we've seen him so far, and has kind of transformed our back line and the passing we get out of it in some ways. And then I will reluctantly sell Rio here, only because I do think I mean, Frank's done an okay job covering that position. We could always go back to a right wing back, which we have some players who could fill in. Potentially Danny Rivera can play this position if he does even exist. So I'll go start Alder, sit Aime, sell Rio. How about you?
It's a dangerous proposition, assuming that Danny Rivera might play. Or that
He's off the injury report.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I think we're 3 for 3 here on our sells. I would sell Rio as well. And the reason I would do it is really between these three guys, I made Alder and Rio. I think his ceiling is the lowest of the three. I think Alder has a pretty high ceiling. I think Aime has already proven himself as an MLS pedigree type of player. So I'd rather keep the two of them. And then it comes down to the start and sit. I struggle with this one because it really is dependent on the lineup that we're playing. I think there's more backup for Aime than there is for Alder. I think that if we were to lose Alder for injury or just needed to rest him, I'm not even convinced that we would stick with a 4-man back line in whatever game that might be, because there really is no one else to play that position. So I'm going purely based on talent and ceiling, and I would say start Aime and sell out or sit Alder, but I could be easily convinced to go the other way. All right,
That's fair.
so that was the last one, and that does it for start, sit, sell. That just about does it here for our first inaugural episode here of Double Pivot. So Timmy, how do you think it went here? This first one probably went a little bit longer than we were hoping, so we'll try to keep more concise. But overall, how do you think it went?
Yeah, we'll see. I don't think we went overly long. I'd probably lean like on brand, give us a 7 out of 10, I think.
7 out of 10. All right.
Yeah, it was fun.
That's a glowing review. I'll take that one.
Yeah.
Not a good enough review though. We want 5 stars for wherever your rating, but for Timmy's player ratings scale, 7 out of 10, pretty good. I'll take that. So that's awesome. And we're excited to really kick this off and do more of these. As Timmy said earlier, we'll try to aim for roughly every 6 weeks or so, or as inspiration strikes. We definitely want to get your feedback here, some ideas for the mailroom segment. If there's other ideas you have for other segments as well, let us know. So yeah, that just about does it. And as a reminder, Tide Talk is more than just podcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook for daily social media content. You should also visit the blog, tidetalkri.com, where you can find a lot of good stuff. So Timmy's player ratings, pre and post-match analysis and reactions from Mr. Matt Hands, pre-match essentials from the GOAT, Patrick McKenna. We have my monthly Tide Chart blog series with the May version should be dropping sometime this week. And then we have our written takes on the latest RIFC news. So as I mentioned before, definitely let us know what your feedback is. What did you like? What you didn't like? Appreciate you taking the time to watch and listen. And we'd love to hear what you think. So thanks again. We'll see you next time. And as always, up the tide.
Up the tide.